Story 1. Everybody wants to get laid and be loved. Generally, men behave with more urgency about sex, and women start from hesitation. Speed and timing are everything. When men are attracted, they feel an almost immediate acute focus on locking down the sex. Women tend to want to savor those little morsels and give their desire more time to charge. That extra time lag for women is for A, building desire, and B, overcoming anxiety. Those men will take you home and be in and out in minutes. Women will ravish you for several hours, even days. Look at the pornography they consume. The average man spends 7 minutes on Pornhub. Lesbians will eagerly sit through a full 2 seasons of sexual tension and yearning on TV, then obsess over smutty fan fiction about it for years. On top of the pace of desire, there are also barriers to overcome. Sex is more vulnerable for most women, so they guard it more and feel comfortable exchanging emotion for free. Emotions are more vulnerable for men, so they guard that more while their sex is cheap. They each start with what's easier for them, keeping the connection going while assessing whether they're game for the other thing. Of course, it doesn't always happen that way in clear-cut sequential order, but that's the underlying trend. Heterosexual couples are constantly compromising and negotiating that to a greater extent than homosexual couples do. Homosexual couples will tend to exaggerate each other's tendencies. That's why Grindr is like instant sex delivery. And lesbians are always grumbling that no one makes a move on this app. This doesn't mean that men want sex and women want emotion. It means that peak moments for sexual desire happen on different timelines. Peak moments for emotional attachment happen on different timelines. Story 2, girl here. You can literally walk up to any guy and flirt with them, and they will be so excited. I could hold up a giant flashing neon sign saying that I am flirting, and the woman I'm flirting with will just take it as a friendly compliment, even in a gay bar. Flirting with women is a mystery to me. Story 3. On early dates, men will try to impress you, while women will try to accommodate you. Men on first dates are often in performance mode. I've been on dates with men where I feel like a one-person audience at a stand-up show. If he's funny and charming, this doesn't have to be a bad time. If he's not, it's very painful or boring. It is often easier and less work to go on dates with men, because he has low expectations that I contribute to the conversation or decide things to do. It can be very relaxing or even flattering to have someone carry you through an evening, trying different things to get you to laugh, showing you their favorite places, revealing a lot about themselves, expecting essentially nothing of you, except maybe intimacy. However, even if he's very fun, I sometimes feel lonely on dates with men. Sometimes this performance includes him asking questions about me, but sometimes it doesn't. I've had many confusing interactions at the end of a date where a guy who knows nothing about me because he hasn't asked tells me he's really into me and thinks the date has gone well. What he means is I listened to him and made him feel good about himself. I think men often project a fantasy of who they want you to be onto you. It can actually feel really nice to get swept up in that, to forget who you are a little bit and lose yourself in someone else's imagination of you. It can sometimes feel like I'm matching his performance with my own performance. This means you usually don't have to be vulnerable and reveal yourself truly until later. Unfortunately, if you get too swept away by the fantasy, you can't be sure that he actually likes the real you. Eventually, you both have to drop the act. There are different problems with dating women. It's very easy to go on 5 dates with a woman and have no idea if you're into her or if she's into you because you've both been so accommodating of the other person you haven't revealed enough about who you are and what you want. It's easy to get stuck in a pleasant coworker level of conversation where no one says anything that could be seen as a deal breaker and no one ever makes a move. If a man is not doing it for you, it will likely be pretty clear from the first few dates. It's easy to waste a lot of time dating women you feel indifferent about because they are friendly and cute and unobjectionable, and there's no obvious reason to call it off. Women are also better at hiding their red flags, because women also see you as equally responsible for the date going well and will ask you lots of questions about yourself. It's more difficult to hide from yourself or your date or disappear into a fantasy. It takes more effort and it also feels more vulnerable. She will see me as I am, and less aspirational, I will be his dream girl. This vulnerability can also become intoxicating in its own way, and good lesbian dates sometimes devolve into trauma-dumping therapy sessions, which can make you feel like you know someone better than you actually do. Story 4. Dating women means I never had to worry about emotional connection. It is very easy with women, at least for me. The sexual connection needed a lot of time, though, and it gets frustrating at times. Also, one more thing that irritated me was that most women don't say a clear yes or no and speak very diplomatically. I also had to take the lead most of the time, which got a bit taxing mentally. Dating men was easier on the sexual part, but connecting with men emotionally is way tougher, even though I'm a man myself. I shared the lead equally here, so that was good. I'm currently dating a woman who says yes and no clearly, is emotionally open, gives gifts, makes plans, and I'm loving it. Story 5. I always use the campfire analogy when it comes to describing sex with men versus sex with women. For women, you have to build that campfire like you're in the Boy Scouts, adding twigs, then sticks, and finally logs, and don't bump the water bucket with your elbow or it will fall in and you'll never get the fire going. If you're careful and you do it right, you can get the fire roaring. For men, the campfire is already built, and some guy is just dumping lighter fluid all over it, while another guy throws a match and screams as the biggest fireball you've ever seen is ignited. You get a little singed, but it's worth it. Story 6. There are a few differences that I have noticed, at least in my experiences. Women. Whenever I am with women, either romantically or just hooking up, it is always softer and more sensual. The dates are more relaxed, and the intimacy lasts longer and is seemingly gentler. They take their time to get you to your peak and will always take care of you after the act is over. Men, more excitement definitely. Dates can range from getting dinner to going out and doing random activities. I do not have to worry as much about what I am doing either, as the ones I have encountered have been more go-with-the-flow types. When it comes to intimacy with men, it's always slightly faster, with less emphasis on foreplay depending on who I am with. It is always rougher too, which is not a bad thing. There's not as much aftercare unless you're dating them. I have fun with both men and women despite the differences that I have noticed between the two. It's always something different depending on who you are with. Never truly a bad thing. Edited to add. I forgot to mention that I am a woman, for the few who wanted to know. Story 7. I'm a guy. Men tell me I'm hot and compliment my body in specific ways. I don't think a woman has ever said a nice thing about my body, at least not to my face. I've always assumed that I was just not that physically attractive, but I think it's women just don't think we need to hear it, or they think it'll go to our heads and we'll find someone more attractive or something. The most women will say is something like, "You're so big and strong." Yeah, so is a trash compactor. Story 8. Straight men tend to fetishize bisexuality, and gay women tend to judge bisexuality. Luckily, either with age or societal change, both of those things seem to be less common, at least in my area. Story 9. As a bisexual man, I've noticed that men, in general, are more accepting of bisexuality than women are. That being said, my wife of 5 years has been incredibly supportive of my sexuality. Story 10. I'm bisexual with a preference for women and am also active in the kink scene. My friends thought I was primarily into men because they've never seen me with a woman. In my experience, men just kind of line up and you can pick one on your work break for later. Securing a date with women requires actually getting to know one another. I completely understand why they need to know you better before wanting to go out. I am not complaining, but practically, I'm so busy with my job and am fairly laid back about dating, I just don't devote the time. The result is entirely male dates for the last several years. Story 11. I'm still rather new to the whole bisexual thing, but differences are noticeable for me at least. For one, I've had far more success with men than women. On the other hand, sex with men, while fun, doesn't quite make me happy or content. I'm leaning more towards women when it comes to sexual preference, so that could be why. Hanging out and dating are similar in many aspects, but men usually give more direct signs of what they want, as opposed to women who are more diplomatic, playing nice, and having expectations like men approaching them first. It's very taxing, to be honest, and I would love to date a girl who can clearly communicate things to me. Compared to them, most of the guys I've interacted with can be such drama queens, which I find annoying. Gay men can sometimes be more dramatic than women. Story 12. From a queer woman, women are much more demanding of emotional intelligence and intimacy on average. Dating women is how I learned I have a disorganized attachment style and am fairly emotionally unavailable. The men I have dated never pushed my capacity enough to notice, but it became a huge issue when dating women. Story 13. This is obviously not an everyday scenario, but I tend to have issues with women being very emotionally dependent, which isn't great for my mental health. Then men tend to be the opposite and will even make fun of me for having slight emotions. Story 14. As a bisexual person, I found that there are some differences between dating men and women, but it's important to remember that these are just generalizations and individual experiences can vary widely. When dating men, I've noticed that societal expectations often play a larger role. There's a tendency for traditional gender roles to influence the dynamics, even if subtly. For instance, there can be an expectation for men to take the lead in planning dates or making the first move. Communication styles can also differ, with men sometimes being more reserved about expressing their emotions, which can require a bit more effort to ensure open and honest dialogue. On the other hand, dating women often feels more emotionally expressive and communicative from the start. There's often a strong emphasis on mutual support and understanding, and I've found it easier to have deep, meaningful conversations early on. The relationship dynamics can feel more egalitarian, with a shared responsibility for planning and decision-making. That said, these are just patterns I've observed, and every relationship is unique. The most important thing is to find someone who respects you, communicates well, and shares your values, regardless of their gender. Story 15. When it comes to the first few dates, most men always put their best foot forward and try to woo you. They pay for everything even when I insist on splitting, try to do the princess treatment of picking you up and dropping you off, talk about interesting things about themselves or things they do, and pay attention to you but also your surroundings. Women tend to expect you'll pay for things or at least prefer splitting. They always ask first where you'd want to meet but usually already have a preferred spot, talk about social things rather than stuff they do unless work is particularly important to them, have bigger reactions to what you talk about, ask more questions, and are hyper-focused on only you. Non-binary individuals fall somewhere in the middle but overall still lean towards their assigned sex at birth or what they grew up being seen as. The longer you go on in dating them, I've noticed that women and non-binary individuals air out their dirty laundry, red flags, and hang-ups way earlier. They talk about their traumas and their exes, which isn't always a bad thing in my experience since I have a better handle on how to interact with them. Men are slower in that regard verbally, but a lot of it shows up in their behavior and thinking, which has been a bad thing more often than not. In terms of compliments, I get the same amount regardless of gender, but the context and content are different. Communication and understanding are generally better with women and non-binary individuals, but emotions often override it. Solutions to problems are faster to reach with men. Sex is easier and faster with men, but I'm not usually attracted to most men, so that makes it less fun on my end, and I usually don't orgasm with men. Women tend to be more open and straightforward about sexual preferences, so it plays a part as well in how we're able to have sex, aside from the obvious distinction of multiple orgasms. Overall, it really depends on the individuals and how those differences and similarities interact with you. For context, I'm a bisexual female who tends to be on the feminine end in terms of looks and speech, but on the masculine end in terms of behavior and thinking. I come from a fairly conservative country, so gender roles are apparent. I have a strong and dominant personality, so that definitely plays a part in the things I've mentioned. Story 16. When talking through a disagreement or relationship issue with a man, I had to be direct and assertive to be heard. When it was a woman, I could be gentler and still be heard and understood. Story 17. Basically, all the comments are about sex. I was looking for real reviews. Is it charcuterie boards or pizza? Are we sitting on couches or recliners? There are many options for dating different genders, and it seems like everyone is glossing over some important details, like hair tie availability, shelf space, closet room, who has the better stocked fridge, yard quality, is anyone handy? Where are the real reviews? Story 18. If you are nice to men, they think you are flirting with them, even when you very clearly aren't. If you directly tell a girl you'd like to sleep with her, she thinks you are being a friend and boosting her confidence. Story 19. I think it depends completely on the person. Men have been so dramatic, And I like that there's less affection between me and another male. But some men are very sensitive and cuddly. Some women have been very shut off and some open. The right people were ones that it was effortless. I like long-term relationships with women more. Well, historically that's mainly, but there are different energies, and in the same way also the same. The way sex is performed is the biggest difference. But I think generalizing would be lying from my personal experience.